Welcome to the latest update for the JAA 708 1950 Leyland Olympic. In this update, we will show you what is the current restoration progress of the Olympic 708. You can jump directly to the time point in this video when I visited the Scottish Vintage Bus Museum in November 2025.
Nothing in vocab is far from the story of the Leyland Olympic 708. Now, in case you went around or you landed from the planet Mars, our 1950 Olympic JAA 708, which was restored at great length and effort and trouble and time in the 2000s up to about, well, it was launched in 2012. On the night in December 2023, now coming up to 2 years ago, was sadly involved in a very, very serious fire, which destroyed a lot of other buses, but didn't quite destroy 708. And after a fight with the circumstances, we had to get the vehicle out of a contaminated, burnt down building. That was all kinds of problems. Having to persuade the insurance company to let us have the vehicle at all. We then were faced with a crippled wreck. What to do with it? Well, we're very fortunate that our relationship with the Scottish Vintage Bus Museum at Leyland led us to get to know Andy Crockett. Andrew Crockett is a very expert vehicle restoration person who has been in the business of putting buses right, old buses right, for a long time. We encountered him first with the Leyland Lion when we acquired that, now a few years ago actually, and then he did magic work on the Dennis 30 weight, and more recently did the finalisation of our Leyland Titan, of which we are duly proud. And I must say, in the midst of everything else, 811, the Leyland Titan PD21, did a day's work on the 14th of September, no bother, no fuss, just tootled back and forth on its allocated schedule and did a wonderful job. So at last 811 has landed. But anyway, back to 708, because Andy volunteered really for the task of fixing it. We can do this, he said, and to begin with, I wasn't sure, to be honest, that I believed him. But then I realised that he meant it. And since then, the project has been going forward astonishingly, really. The bus was transferred, the wreck was transferred to Scotland in the spring of this year. But before that, a very key thing had happened, which was the discovery that the drawings from MCW, Metro Camel Wayman, the people who designed and eventually built and sold the vehicle back in the late 1940s, those drawings had all been kept because when the MCW factory at Washwood Heath in Birmingham closed down, John Seal, who was at the time working for there, a great Midlands bus enthusiast and bus preservationist, he ensured that those drawings, and many other MCW drawings incidentally, were grabbed from destruction and taken to the Midland Bus Museum at Withall. And the Midland Bus Museum, to their enormous credit, digitized those drawings, the big things like this, the blueprint drawings, but they got them into a format that could be sent around by email, and then they gave the whole lot to the bus archive at Droitwich, a wonderful place for them to be. And the bus archive made them digital copies of these drawings, having shown us the drawings, which was an extraordinary experience in itself. They gave us the digitized copies to be used to facilitate the restoration of the Olympic. And my, have they already done so? Because what has happened is that those digitized versions of the drawings have now, thanks to an amazing chap called Callum Melrose, who is a volunteer at Northumberland and an engineer with a specific expertise and interest in computer-aided design, he took one look at all this and said these could be turned into CAD, electronic drawings, three-dimensional, and that will enable us to accelerate the process of producing the steel work that we need to reconstruct this vehicle. And do you know what? That's exactly what's been happening. So that Andy has been working away, first of all, at taking the old vehicle to pieces. We were able to get a Leyland Royal Tiger chassis from further up in Scotland to use as a source of bits and pieces for an underfloor engine, 600 engine vehicle. And Andy has brought all that together and has started to reassemble the chassis using what he can from the original, which isn't much, I'm afraid, because most of it was twisted, heated too hot, not usable second time round. But thanks to the computer-aided design scheme of things, he can literally send a file to the people who make the steel into shape, and they can feed that information into their computers and fabricate to the exact specification of the original drawings all the pieces that we need to reconstruct this vehicle. And that process has started, and the chassis frame is being formed, and all of a sudden you can see the beginning of a rebirth of JAA 708.
After recording this section in October, I think it is time to visit Scotland, to visit the Scottish Vintage Bus Museum, to have a look at the current progress of the JAA 708 restoration. Good morning, Andy. Here we are in Leyland at the Scottish Vintage Bus Museum. This is the center of the action on Operation Rebuild 708. And you're right in the middle of making it all happen for us. Standing beside the remnants of the Olympic, this is the bit that's left. A lot more was left when we brought it up.
Yes, it was.
Now it's reduced really to this and some other bit, which we'll go on and look for. But in the case of this bit, how much of this are we actually going to be able to reuse, do you think?
Well, pretty much of the front we're going to be all using again, all the window pans and probably the cross section here and pillars here. Chassis wise, that's all getting renewed. Probably the intermediate section between the two chassis legs, we'll keep that. And try and use as much as we can. Well, we're going to be using all the bracketry for the doors. Probably the step, we'll just not replace the step, but sort of repair it all, and try and keep as much as we can. This is the complete back end of the actual sort of chassis, so to speak, which is all sort of twisted and bent in every direction. So basically this is just used for patterns. So the front of the bus is there, and this is the rear of the bus. The chassis part is upside down at the minute. So this is obviously where the axle fits, which you'll see on the new bit that's already been made. So this is 708's original diff, which on the actual teeth of the actual crown wheel, there's sort of very bad pitting. So what we've done, we've used the diff out of the Royal Tiger, and that's all been fitted into the new sort of 708's axle tubes, which you'll see a picture shortly. And there's the actual half shaft, where the offside of the rear of the bus got extremely hot, and that where you can see the actual half shaft's gone blue, along with the bearings.
Blue in colour?
Blue in colour, along with, which you can see there, the new half shaft.
Not blue at all.
Not blue at all. This is the Royal Tiger chassis, yeah. We've stripped part of the axle down and taken, obviously, the diff out, as you can see. We're going to be utilising the gearbox out of this due to the fact of the heat with the other one. And various, we've used brake rod fixings, etc., steering wheel, and various bits and bobs we'll still be using off it. So basically, once we stick the axle back in, we'll take all the hubs off, check all the bearings, all the actual brake chambers away at the minute are getting overhauled due to, you know, the heat, obviously. New shock absorbers will be fitted, check all the kingpins, and make sure everything's okay. Back axle. So, the rear axle. That's the diff out of the Royal Tiger, and this is 708 tubes which have been fitted. The Royal Tiger was vacuumed, whereas this was air. So basically, taken all the measurements from the existing chassis and replicated everything to form what we have here. These are all the actual plates that we've had made and laser cut and pre-drilled. These are actually for the chassis. Wherever you've got an actual joint on a chassis, the plates act as a reinforcement. All the actual metal work here was done out of a flat plate and then webs welded to it. All the bracketry was, you know, is all 5mm and bent, and basically a chassis formed. So the wheels will be sitting here, spring hanger here. We're waiting for spring hangers to come back here with new bushes pushed in, and yeah, that's what we have. Yeah, the back of the bus is here. Still to sort of get its chamfer put on to take the pillar. So this particular bit here is the start of the front part of the chassis, where the front axle will eventually fit. Got a shocker mounted already here. So this leg here is the offside front. We've managed to sort of keep a bit of originality and use an intermediate section, and like I said before, we'll hopefully use an intermediate section from the original there as well. Here's the fuel tank here. This is another part that we're hopefully, well, we will be saving. One of the outriggers to go on the actual chassis there. This is the fuel tank.
Original?
All original, apart from I've welded a hole up at this far end here.
This was a hole made when it was pulled out from the side?
Pulled out, yeah. Yeah, so is that where the level of fuel was? We've made, there was one bracketry piece left, which has been a template to make all the rest, which is there and there.
The bracket for the
for the fuel tank, what holds the fuel tank in. These fit in there like so, with a bracket here, what goes on the underside of the fuel tank, which holds it all in. So that's where we are, like so. So this is the centre section that fits to the rear section that you've just been looking at. That's the back, and this is the front here, and the two silver sections, and that's where the underslung engine will fit.
And then the silver bits here,
Yes,
they are the original.
they're all the original, and that's where the engine hangs off. And all the bearers have had to be cut out to take the plates to keep the actual form all level.
So the position you're standing on is actually the front of the vehicle.
Yeah, this is the actual front.
Let's go to have a look at the engine, shall we?
So yeah, this is the Olympic's original engine. Quite a few things sort of wrong with it.
For example?
Well, I think the number 4 and 5 piston were tight in the bore, and I think that's one of the reasons when it got hot, it was picking up in the actual bore. And I think that's one of its major issues.
Now I remember in one of the previous recording when I was asking why at the night of the fire the 708 was there at the Penton site. Let's hear what Bob said.
It originally it had this thing where every so often it would boil over. It would pump the water out the radiator and would boil over. And the best engineering brains did various things to it, cleaned the system, and in the end they even had the cylinder heads off the engine and overhauled them and put it back together. And it drove reasonably well, but still it was showing up still that it had an engine fault. And as I say, I think that was why the engineering team decided that they put it over to Penton through the Christmas period while we had the running day, and when we'd finished that in January, when we had a bit more time, we'd bring the vehicle back, and then we'd once again have another look at the engine and see if we could find out why it still was not performing properly. But sadly, while it was there, with its tail between its legs, that's when it was overcome by the fire.
So what are we going to do with the engine?
What we've decided to do, there's a person within the museum who's got a Leyland 600 underslung engine, which I purchased off him, which he says is a good engine. So we'll check it all out, do whatever's necessary, hopefully not a lot, and then hopefully get it fitted in due course.
What is this one here?
So that's a part of, again, goes between the two front chassis legs, which holds all the alternator and the adjustment for all the belts for the alternator. Again, these have been sourced from the Royal Tiger because it had all the bushes in them, whereas 708s were just burnt. We've got pillars, which are sort of getting manufactured as we speak, and then we'll start sourcing, you know, the metal for the reinforcing between pillars, etc. We've got one pillar which survived on the whole bus, which we can use as a pattern to get rolled at a fabrication company not too far away from here. So this is the actual pillar, and that's what we're looking to form with the actual T section that we bought. It's very complex. If you get this wrong, this is the bus in and out, here, there, and everywhere.
What have we got here, Raymond?
Well, I know it's a bit early for it, but we've had the number plates reproduced. So we're ready to go as soon as the vehicle's ready. And here we have it, the rear one. So we actually, I know again it's ahead of the game, but we have all the lights for the front ready to go back on as soon as the body's ready to take them.
We have two, right, the front and the back.
Front and the back, yeah.
So you can see that things have been happening in the grand scale, and we're well on the way towards having the first stage of our project complete, which is when we've got a basic rolling framework with all the engines and mechanics associated with it. So the big question now is, we've spent about 75,000 quid so far. It will be roughly, that will go up to 150,000 by the time we've got that rolling frame. The big number, if you like, is £500,000. £500,000 is our total budget, consisting of 3 phases, each of 150,000 and 50,000 on top for contingencies. Now, we continue to raise funds in every which way, and the amount to raise now has dwindled a bit, and it is just slightly under £200,000 that we've still got to find. This is the moment when we need our friends to come forward and look around them and say, what have I got in my pockets, and what can I add to this project? The big steam locomotives that have been built from nothing absolutely depend on independent donations, and we're no different from that. So if you want to help us, or you want to help us some more, because we've had some very generous benefactors already, then visit our website, and you can see there how very easily you can donate. And in fact, we also have a site on justgiving.com, and there are all kinds of ways in which you can help us to fulfill this dream to rebuild the 1950 Leyland Olympic JAA 708. So thank you for watching, and thank you for everything that you can do to help us.
Thank you for watching. I hope this video helped you to understand the current progress of 708. If you'd like to donate, please visit the King Alfred website at www.kingalfredbuses.org.uk. And don't forget to click on like and subscribe to this channel. See you in the next one.